What's up, y'all? Welcome to On the Journey with John Paul Dombrowski. My name's John Paul, and today is all about doing the things you commit to, even when the conditions are not perfect. There's a lot of days like that. I think my last one was like that too. But the conditions don't have to be perfect to put a foot forward and keep walking. And the conditions don't have to be perfect to honor your commitments. The conditions aren't perfect because my gimbal's broken. It's not working, so it's kind of just hanging here like a limp noodle. It's rainy outside. My kids are probably about to wake up because it's a little bit later. And a whole other list of things. But I wanted to show up and continue to do what I'm doing. And so I think I want to talk about one of my favorite kind of realizations or explorations that I've come to surrounding the Beatitudes. For one thing, because I'm excited to share it, and when I talk about things out loud, it helps me to kind of come to know them better. But secondly, because I figured that if this episode is terrible and awful, then I'll just have a good excuse to do it again, talk about it more, as we have our beautiful trash men. But the line that I really wanted to focus on is, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And I've heard a lot of different explanations of this over the years, but none of them have ever really made a lick of sense to me. That is until relatively recently. And what I've heard was things like, well, it means being lonely in spirit, like kind of being depressed. I've heard it means being humble, but I think being humble of heart is one of the other parables as well. So none of the explanations that I ever got really made sense to me. That is until I started exploring and discovering an idea that I've termed spiritual materialism. And what spiritual materialism means to me is our tendency in the spiritual life, especially, to grab on to spiritual goods and to push away spiritual undesirables. And this is very much connected to my mindfulness practice. But just like in the everyday world, to be materialistic means to grab on to things, to care too much about clothes and all these things. And God says in the gospel, is later on in the gospel, "But seek ye first the kingdom of heaven." God knows you need all these things. But look at the daisies of the field, right? They're taken care of. And so will you if you first seek the kingdom. But spiritual materialism to me is, so often what is the biggest opposition in prayer is our obsession with feelings. We want to feel God's presence. We don't want to feel the presence of suffering, right? And we can believe that, right? Oh, I'm offering my sorrows to the Lord. I'm giving my sorrows to the Lord. But a lot of the times, I think this can be a spiritual escapism, a spiritual bypass, where we're saying, like, God, you take the suffering. I'm just giving it to you, without actually realizing that what God calls us to do is to carry our cross in unity with Him, but to carry our cross. So spiritual materialism to me is our tendency to grasp for good spiritual feelings, the feelings of consolation, right? And Ignatius says this. And it's our tendency to push away or avoid negative subjective emotional states, negative spiritual states. And this is what in the mindfulness tradition, the Buddhists define suffering as, that suffering comes from our tendency to push away our experiences or try to grab on to other experiences. And the mindfulness traditions teach us that we find peace when we stop striving to change our experience and learn to just accept it as it is. And that's what I believe it means to be spiritually impoverished. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who take a spiritual oath of poverty. Blessed are those who choose not to cling to good feelings, not to chase good feelings, not to push away bad feelings, Blessed are those who allow the changing weather and the seasons of our interior life to come and go, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. And this is one of the other beautiful insights, kind of connects with I think my second video on the direct path that I've learned from mindfulness, that the very thing that you're seeking, the very awakening you're seeking, the very enlightenment you're seeking, the very relationship you're seeking with God, it's already here. It's already here. It's not about becoming more holy so that, no, God is here. And so what happens when we learn to be spiritually impoverished, to go through the purgation, to let go of our spiritual materialism, our tendency to cling on to feelings, to strive for feeling states, to push away other feeling states. This is what Ignatius says, right? About consolations and desolations. Both consolation and desolation, they're neither good nor bad. They are good when we allow them to bring us closer to Christ. Both consolations and desolations are both opportunities to come closer to Christ. It's not that consolations are good and desolations are bad, but that's the way that I hear it talked about in the Catholic circles a lot. Oh, I'm in a stage of desolation, like you're doing something wrong. You're not. You're not. And this is why blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the spiritually impoverished. Blessed are they who are no longer striving to feel some feeling, for they will see that the kingdom of heaven is already here. When we stop pushing away bad feelings and grabbing on to good feelings, we find a peace that surpasses all understanding. And it's right here, right now. The kingdom of heaven is within you. It's within you. This has made all the difference in my spiritual life, in my personal life. That when I show up to prayer, it's not about me showing up and saying, God made me feel good, or God makes sense to me. When I show up into prayer with the Lord, I literally just sit and I say, hey, this is where I am. Here's what's happening to me. Prayer is not an action on our part, right? It's a remembering of God's goodness and a turning towards Him. When there was a time where I really committed to praying every day, and it was this kind of back and forth experience, right? I would show up to prayer and I was frustrated and irritated, and most of my time was spent trying to figure out, like, is God even real or not, right? I wasn't really praying. Really what I was doing was wrestling and feeling frustrated with God. Some people out there. I wasn't really praying. I was really trying to figure out, should I be praying or not? Is there a God worth praying to? And it was so angsty. It was so frustrating. I was like, God, are you there? God, are you not there? It was every day. Till one day I just kind of said, you know what? I'm fed up with this BS. For the part of me that doesn't know whether God is there or not, I know that when I pray, I'm a better person. My life is much better. And also, I really do believe in God's presence, even though maybe there's parts of me that aren't sure. And at the time, there were a lot of parts of me that are unsure. More so than now, I guess. I felt a very big unsureness about God's presence. But what I knew was that praying was good. And so what I committed to, I said, you know what? I'm going to stop thinking about whether I should pray or not during my prayer. and I'm going to commit. I'm going to commit to praying for the rest of my life. And for me, what that meant was 5 days a week. I don't pray super, super well on the weekends. I'm trying to get better at it, but I just don't. But I knew that I could do 5 days a week. So I've committed to just showing up 5 days a week, every day. And what do? What am I committing to with God? I'm committing to showing up. Regardless of feeling good, regardless of feeling bad, regardless of feeling like he's alive, regardless of feeling like God's dead, regardless of feeling that God's close to me, regardless of feeling that God's far away from me, my commitment is to show up. And since then, my prayer life has really blossomed. But your prayer life doesn't blossom in a matter of weeks. Your prayer life doesn't blossom in a matter of months. That's just maybe planting the seed. Your prayer life blossoms over years. And oftentimes our perspective is way, 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 way too small. But it comes back to this idea of stop worrying about the results and start showing up. Consistency, repeatedly. And so what I made in that commitment, and I guess I'm coming to this realization right now, when I made that commitment of God, I'm going to show up, regardless of if I believe, regardless if I feel like it. What I was doing was I was allowing myself to be spiritually impoverished, to be very poor spiritually, to have a very poor spiritual experience. I was letting go of that spiritual materialism which had been driving me before, which is saying, are you here or are you not? Can I trust you or can't you? Is this real or is this the hokey pokey? And so I let go of that need to feel God's presence. I let go of that need for God to show me that he was there. And when I stopped looking for God, I started to see him everywhere. In the cicadas, in the cat, in the house, in the rain, in my body, in my breath. When I came to let go of the pushing and the pulling and stepping into experience as it is, I can feel it now, a tingling in my chest, a warming and expansion. My prayer started to shift and I started to pray this prayer of, God, you're right in front of my nose at all times. Help me to see you. Help me to wake up. And what stuck with me so deeply is this line. I think when Jesus is talking to the daughter of Jairus, the centurion, and he says, Talitha cum. Talitha cum. My little beloved one. My little girl, my little love. Wake up. Arise. Christ says, I think there, maybe other places, she's not dead but asleep. And so that's my prayer, that this striving, this pushing, this pulling, this pushing, this pulling, this wanting to feel good, this wanting to feel peace, this wanting to feel confident, it's a developmental stage, but we have to pass that. And my prayer now is, God, help me to wake up. To wake up from this delusion. To wake up from this dream state, this grasping, this wanting, this pulling, this pushing. Help me to show up and do what's right, because it's right. That's enough. And when we learn to train our minds to let go of the push and the pull, what immediately shows up when we learn how to do that is the peace that surpasses all understanding. Because the kingdom of heaven is within you. So, we'll continue. I think I'm going to put up a meditation here after this to kind of lean into this. So, check that out. Take good care.